Welcome to the Creative Baggage Podcast. I'm your host, Serena.
And I'm Justin.
We're here to unpack our creative baggage, share innovative ideas, and help you build a fulfilling creative career. Today's episode features a special guest.
Hi, my name is Taylor Rossi. I'm a flutist and website designer for Nicole Riccardo Media. I'm based in Boston, and I'm super excited to be here today.
Yeah, I would love to know how you got into web design. So I'm also a flutist. I also like websites a lot. Justin and I talk about this a lot. We're always sending each other like really cool sites that we find on the internet, like the old style ones that, you know, aren't really like trendy anymore, I guess, but just like they're cool or like HTML looking or something. But yeah, how did you get started with your web design journey?
Yeah, so I basically started it through doing my own. I, at one point in my career, thought that I was going to have a full flute studio and that was going to be my main job. And I remember designing my website for it and just loving it so much. And it got to the point where I started to enjoy that more than the process of building a flute studio. And I was like, maybe I should think about this a little bit. And then I had this crazy opportunity where I had a friend who's a flutist, and she had this part-time job at this like natural soap company in Boston. And she was like, hey, my boss is pretty terrible at updating her website and is looking for someone to do it for her. And I really like yours and I really like your aesthetic. Would you be interested in just helping her out at like an hourly rate? And I said yes. And it was just the craziest thing because I was like, I have no experience doing this. Like, this is a very odd thing for someone to just ask me to do and be willing to pay me. So there was a bit of some imposter syndrome and like, you should not be paying me to do this. But I said yes anyway, because, you know, you say yes when you get those opportunities. And I just realized that I really enjoyed the process of doing it. And one thing that's really nice about websites is you always get to update it and there's always changes that can be made. And I mean that not in an overwhelming sense, but like in the sense that if someone doesn't like something or if it's not responding well, you can always change it. And I feel like that's nice to not be locked into something forever, where a lot of other like arts and mediums and things like that, you kind of are done with it once you put it out into the air, into the world.
And what was the pivot like? Like, did you have a point where like you were still doing more flute stuff and then you decided to change, or that you just kind of straddled the balance between both until you just like had more clients in one direction or the other?
Yeah, it was pretty much that, just kind of starting to slowly move away from flute stuff. I have one or two students right now, so I still find myself wanting to play and teach a little bit, but I found that for me, when I really like something, I do it really well. And when I don't like something, it does not go well. And I have a hard time putting that same amount of effort and energy into it. And I also feel like if I'm working with someone or whatever it is, and it's not something I'm really passionate about, I don't feel like it's, beneficial for them too. So just kind of knowing that I could really put more energy into this. There was one point where I had a temp job. It was like a maternity leave cover for an office manager position at this stock company. And it was just super random and kind of just like pay the bills. But during my lunch breaks and after work and on the weekends, I would start doing website design work. And because I knew it was only 3 months, I was able to do it. But I noticed towards the end, I was getting really burnt out and was like at that point where I had to decide if I was going to pick up another part-time job or just kind of like take a huge leap. And I took a huge leap. It was a little bit of a stumble, but financially, but it eventually got there, and it was definitely worth it. But I found that kind of easing into it a little bit at first was helpful for me.
Right. And did you like invest in like extra training and education in that, or was it all just kind of self-taught through your experiences?
Partly both, because the design style that I do and the platforms I work with, mainly with Wix, it didn't require any code. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good time. I didn't have to. I had this idea that there was just like a lot of moments where I was like, I can do this and I can do this. And I was like, I'm going to be a coder, and that's going to be really cool. And I'll be like in computer science, and like we need more females in that position, all this stuff. And I started to learn coding, and I was like, this is really boring for me. Like, I don't enjoy this. And I wound up being really drawn to the front end aspect of things. So I was like, all right, what can I do to balance this? And so with Wix, it was a lot of my own experience, but I did use a lot of like online trainings and things like that just to understand like what goes into a website design and like what's not terrible and things like that. But that was the big upside of not having to learn coding, because like I said before, if I don't like something, I do not do it well.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of like just like the click and drag interfaces, because like because I feel like as creatives, as artists, like we often do have a good eye for design, but it's like, we spend so much time working on our specific craft, and for us it was flute. And so, you don't have time to invest an energy to invest in every little thing that you could potentially be good at. But if for like Wix and for like Canva with graphics, if you can like have your vision and have a way to create it that's somewhat intuitive and not going into the details and like the technical stuff as much, I feel like for me that's also gotten me more interest in back end stuff, like with coding and stuff. On like I make our website on Wix as well, and like not interested in coding that much either, but I've actually learned a lot through like working with coders for specific things that we needed on our website, for example. And I feel like that is like a cool way to kind of ease me into like the basics and little things here and there. But it's nice to not feel like you have to know all of the knowledge right off the bat in order to do anything.
Yeah, 100%. I also love Canva. And I think with both of these things, it's like, it's not necessary. If there's these tools out there, it's not necessary to put yourself through having to learn this whole other thing. So I really am glad to be alive in a time where you don't have to go through all those things. Like, but also I wanted to say, I was looking at your resources page, this platform you just launched with all of the like jobs and things like that. And it's so responsive, and I just love the layout of it. So that was really cool to look through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a funny story. We were because I put the pieces where I wanted them to go, on Wix. You're very familiar. But then I was like, I don't know how to make this work. And so actually my brother is a computer science major in Indiana. And so he just finished his freshman year, but over the summer I was like, hey, can we hop on a few Zoom calls? I'm going to show you what I want. Like, can you figure out how to get it done? And like my brother and I didn't have a lot in common. So I was just like, we get together like for family gatherings and stuff like that, but it actually kind of gave us something to like work on together and talk about. And he had a lot of great ideas, but I feel like he really pulled through with that. And because he has also like an intuitive idea of like how websites should work, like when I put the buttons where they needed to be, when I put the search bar where it should be, then he knew like what to connect with what, because it's pretty intuitive once you see the visual layout of the site.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I love that you had that collaboration. I feel like similarly, like I have an older brother, and we kind of had that style at first, but he has like one way of thinking and I have another. So I feel like that's almost how it works for so many of these styles. It's like you need one person to have the vision and then someone else to execute it with the technical aspects, because it's a lot to ask one person to be able to do all of that. So yeah, I'm a big fan of just when you can collaborate with people who that's their jam, that's their specialty, and you don't have to spend all of your time dreading the thing that you have to do when someone else can just do it for you.
Right. And speaking of collaboration, you said that you work for or with Nicole Riccardo Media, and I looked it up. It's a team of 3, right? So how does that work? Who does what? How did you guys come together for this project?
Yeah. So we actually just had our brand designer. We have a new person. But originally the 3 of us, are all flutists, and it kind of came together from that and figuring out we all had really different strong suits. So basically the way it works is, if someone, let's say they have an inquiry, Nicole will figure out, like what they're really looking for and what package is best for them and what fits their budget and what fits their vision, all those things. Cause she's really good at having those like, all right, this is what you actually need kind of conversations. And then it would go to our brand designer and she would kind of take over all of the like color palettes and font designs and any of the logo designs and graphics and things like that. And then it comes to me and I'll build out the whole thing and put together their copy and actually like take everything and put it into Wix. So it kind of works really well with everyone's particular strong suits so that none of us are having to do, like, I do not like doing sales calls. That is not, I would probably talk someone out of working with us if I had to do. I'm like, you could go somewhere else. Like, and you could probably get it for cheaper. It would be worse, but it's fine. And so it's just, I love what we do and I'm really proud of it, but I'm just not the person to do that. So Nicole's really good at that and just kind of everyone doing their particular thing. I think it works really well together with the way that all of our brains work and the things we enjoy. So that's basically how that process works and how our team works. And it's super fun, especially getting to work with musicians and other creatives and things like that, because again, like they just want to be performing. They just want to be teaching. Like they don't want to be building out their website because it's a big project and you're already so limited in the time you have in your day and in your life. So being able to outsource that is super fulfilling for me.
Yeah, having a good team is super, super important. How did you meet them?
Literally through Instagram, just the flu Instagram world. We worked together for a full year before we met in person. And to see, I find this so weird. I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but when I meet someone in real life, I always think that they're going to be taller than they are. And everyone
yes.
It's so bizarre. So seeing them in like full on 3D, I guess, is so interesting. But yeah, so right now we actually have 2 other people who joined our team doing like social media and copywriting and stuff. And we're literally in 3 different time zones. And I'm sure you guys are trying to figure that out too. But during our first meeting, I already messed up the time zones. It's like, I think we're in Eastern time, Central time, and Mountain time. And I can't keep track. It's too many times.
It's crazy. Just like scheduling some of these Zoom meetings for the podcast recordings because there's like 3 different time zones happening and Zoom doesn't necessarily tell me what Eastern time is for the meeting. So it's kind of a logistical nightmare, but we're killing it. It's great.
Yes. What time is it for you, Serena? What time is it right now?
It is 5:17 p.m. I feel like I'm so used to doing the math now. Like I also teach students in both New Jersey and in California. So like every day I'm like doing the math in my head. Okay, subtract 6 hours, subtract 9 hours.
Oh my God.
So actually, Justin, if you want to put the Zoom in Eastern time, we could do that and I'll just figure it out.
Okay.
It is kind of cool, I think, to be working with people from all over. I'm usually the one where people are like, you're a lot shorter than I thought you were.
No, that's what I thought.
How tall are you?
I'm like 5'1", so very small.
Interesting. Yeah, you give off taller energy.
I get that a lot.
I find that so fun to meet like internet friends too, especially like knowing someone on Instagram for the longest time and then, you get to meet in real life and it's just the craziest thing. Like, growing up, our parents are like, do not talk to strangers on the internet. And you're like, these are my closest friends.
No, it's crazy how that is.
Honestly, I appreciate now that you can just kind of network with people from all over. Like your options are kind of unlimited and like you really can work with people who are within your niche or like your values align. Like oftentimes I think if you're only thinking within your city or within your area, then maybe if you've been living there for a while, you already kind of know everyone in the music circle or in whatever circle. And so if you didn't find a good collaborator, like for me, finding good like chamber music partners can be tricky. And like I've been in Paris for a year now, but just like through school and stuff, I haven't really met the right people that I would want to start like a chamber group with or anything. And that is limited by space and geography. And so I'm kind of like, well, I guess now is not the time to be able to do that because I don't know the right people. Versus with being able to do things online, like these podcast interviews with your web team, with all of like the music making that is virtual, then you get, unlimited access to everyone's creativity, everyone's talent, and like personalities. And yeah, Justin and I met Justin, you haven't even met our intern Davey yet.
I've never met him in real life.
But I met him in person, like when I went back to the US, like in September. So we've been working together for like months at that point, and it was like, oh yeah, hi. And he was way taller than I thought. The man is like 6'2" or something.
Maybe we should be putting these on like contact forms now. It's like, all right, name, email, how tall are you, phone number. Just sneak it in there. What can I expect? It's so
We're
wild.
We're going to put that in our guest form.
Amazing. Yeah. That'll be really helpful. I'll go back and add in my height for you. But yeah, it's so interesting. And I feel like it's such a nice way, like creatively, to continue like relationships with people, or just like, I always find it really fascinating just hearing about how different someone's life is, or like how different it seems from afar and how similar you are. Like one of my old roommates and best friends here, like grew up in India, moved here when she was 24 or something like that. And like so much of our family dynamics are so similar, but then there's obviously things about us that are like completely different. And so just, having that kind of those conversations I think are really cool, even if, like we obviously met in person, but for anyone else who you're meeting online or through work or through music or anything like that, it's just really cool to find those differences and similarities.
Right. And you never know where like collaborations can even occur, right? Like it never occurred to me, like most of my high school friends went into like business or like software engineering, like a lot of the standard classics, you can get a job. And so when I was doing music, I felt like, wow, like I can't really relate to them, especially during our university years. It was like we were just doing such different things in school that there wasn't too much to talk about. But now it's kind of coming back around in a full circle, because like I'm learning about how to do business. I'm learning about marketing. I'm learning about even like web development stuff, what goes behind the scenes. And now I'm like, I should reach out to like my friends and pick their brain on what they learned in school, because I didn't go to business school.
Yeah, I feel like it's like high school people, if they're not trying to get you involved in an MLM, then there's definitely people I want to be, getting to know. I don't know if you've had that experience, but I've had it a few times. I do not want to buy your skincare products. But no, it's nice. I feel like it's like you get to see people come into themselves and not just be these like awkward, sweaty kids that we once were. And I find it really interesting. And definitely just regarding what you said about, business and marketing, really wish we had more of that in music school, but it's certainly nice to learn about it now and through other people and things like that. And I guess knowing that you're not pigeonholed into one thing, like if you are interested in it, you can learn about it now when you're older. And I actually love learning about things outside of school because I'm not required to. I can do it in my own time. I can do it because I enjoy it, versus being graded on everything all the time. But yeah.
Hi, everyone. We wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Flute Center of New York. The Flute Center of New York is the world's marketplace for flutes. Whether you're shopping for your first beginner flute or your first gold flute, the Flute Center's team of resident flutists can help you find the perfect instrument for you. Contact the Flute Center for a free in-home trial today, and don't miss the Flute Center's podcast, Flute Unscripted, featuring candid conversations with the most famous and influential flutists of our time. Do you feel like there's anything that you gained from majoring in music and from doing what you did for so long that somebody else might not have the perspective for?
That's a really good question. I do feel like the discipline aspect has been really helpful. I also grew up doing ballet for a long time before I decided I was going into music. And I feel like those two styles were very similar. Like both of them, like the rigorousness and discipline, all those things had very similar concepts. So I feel like that played a huge part in it. I definitely feel like working with musicians and building websites for them, like knowing what they need and what people want to see is super, super helpful versus someone who mainly develops sites for like, like just regular business things, like not creative things. They're not going to know the terminology as well and what people are looking for when they visit either a studio teacher's website or an artist's website and things like that. So I find that really, really helpful. And I think even just knowing, like, not to say that all music people are the same, but I feel like there's helpful ways for approaching music people that others might not get. For example, like that musician schedules are often very unreliable, and just kind of how to approach them in order to make their lives easier, especially when you're doing such a big project together. It can be really overwhelming for them. And so just kind of, I found there's actually been a huge emotional component to the work that I do because people get really overwhelmed, and just kind of reassuring them, like, you did not go to school for this. You're not expected to know this. I'm just putting the information in front of you and asking you to do the best that you can with providing me what I need in order to do my job. And there's just a lot of reassurance and being like, it's okay. Like, I know you're doing a lot. And in even like the imposter syndrome aspect of I'm not at the point where I think I deserve to have a website, just kind of talking through those things and being like, it's here to help you. It's not your memoir yet. So just kind of talking through those processes has been an unexpected part of my job, but something that I think is really important. So I'm not sure if that answered your question about the music background, but
No, definitely.
That's been a lot of my experience.
There's a lot of things in there that you brought up that are super like unique to having been a musician yourself. And I feel like the musician who has a website versus musician who doesn't have a website is such a big like mental jump in our heads. Like, it's the same thing with like being able to identify yourself as a professional or be able to identify yourself as like, like just even calling yourself a musician, calling yourself a flutist, comes with a lot of like getting over imposter syndrome and like stepping into who you want to be versus like, just thinking like, oh yeah, I'm a music student, I go to music school. Like, that feels, I think, almost, it feels easier. It feels lighter because you don't feel like there's like responsibility that comes with that. And then the moment where you're graduated and you have to say like, I am a professional, or like, I'm going to, invest money into building a website and have that website be out on the internet and searchable, hopefully. I think that's a big barrier. Like, I made my website when I was in high school just because I was into that kind of stuff, but my mom was like, why do you need a website? Like, you're paying like a couple $100s a year for like the domain and the service, and like, what is the point? Like, people aren't going to find you, or like, you're not even done with school yet. But I think like for me, it just felt good to have like my portfolio out there. And like, I have gotten students through my website over the years. And I think it helps that it was longstanding, even though obviously the first couple of years that it was up and running, I didn't get much traffic at all. But yeah, have you had any stories like personally or with your clients of, that battle between website holder and non-website holder?
Yeah. First, I just want to say that's super awesome. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that they had a website in high school and were like ready to take that leap. So that's really awesome. And I hope that you should tell more people that, because that would encourage them, I think, to hear that you did that too. More so, I found that the struggle has been people want to write only in academic third-person language, and what we do for our websites is very much encourage like first-person language because it's a lot more personalized, and it really gets across who you are, and that's a very underrated thing. There is a difference between academic language and still being professional. It's not, unanimous, but a lot of people struggle with that because they're so used to writing for papers or for, like their DMA and things like that. So just reminding them, like, we've done this before. We've had many clients do it. It's not going to like demote you in the world or make you look less than. It's actually has a very much intention to it. And we're not just saying this because we think it would be fun. Like, it actually has a purpose to it. And so that's been the biggest struggle. There is always a conversation about, like, if I have an Instagram, why do I need a website? And for example, something that's come up a lot is I don't actively perform anymore. I did a little bit before COVID, and I've gotten some emails about like wedding gigs and things like that. And because I'm not really in shape anymore, I'll often try and refer them to friends and things like that. And I have a couple like flute friends in the area who just have their Instagram, and it feels super unprofessional to me to send it to someone and be like, this is their Instagram, this is what they sound like, versus having a website that's like really catered to what they can offer and things like that. So it's literally costing people opportunities because I don't feel comfortable sending them someone. Like, for certain things, like an Instagram is probably enough, but for professional gigs where someone's paying you a good amount of money, it's not my jam to send it to them. So I think that's been the biggest pushback of like, if I have an Instagram, like, why do I need a website too?
Yeah. And like for our listeners who do have websites, what are things that like make the difference between someone looking at your website and actually like using it and actually reaching out and contacting you versus, every other website that's sitting on there with some videos and a bio?
Yeah. So when it comes to your website, you want it to be as straightforward and simple as possible. Not saying that it can't be creative or well designed. That's not the same. What I mean is it should be super, super, super easy to navigate. And you never want someone who's on your website to have to use their brain more than 2% to figure out what next steps to take or how to navigate it or what they're even looking at. It should be really clear. And I always like to look at things from a backwards or a zoomed out glance. If I can kind of look at something and figure out what it is just from that glance, then I know it's a super clear, great website that's going to translate really well. I've seen some websites where they get really creative with the menu navigation thing. And I'm like, I don't know how to get to a next page. I see what you're trying to do, and that's great for something else, but this is not the place to get all fancy with it. There are definitely things you can do to spice it up, but I found that that's a big one. One thing that is very like school website typical versus a next level website is having one page dedicated just to all of your videos and performances and things like that. We recommend spreading it out throughout your website. You can certainly have a page that's like a press page, or if you need to have like an EPK or anything like that, like having a designated spot for that is great. But the point of a website, which I did not know at first, so that's why I'm out here trying to educate people about it, is that your website is for clients and customers and students and people trying to book you. It is not your place to say, this is how great I am, and these are all the awards I've won, and this is why I'm so special, and all these great things. My favorite thing to say is to save that for your memoir or when you're like, having your own special or something like that. But your website is basically to show people like why you can help them and why you're the right person for this job. They don't really care, unfortunately, which, we just come to terms with. But and I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Making sure it's mobile friendly is a huge one. I'm sure all of us look up websites more on your phone than you do on your computer. So anytime you make an update, anytime you're doing any design work, always make sure to check it out on your phone before you hit publish. So those are a few things that can really make such a big difference versus either having a really clunky website or one that looks really outdated.
Yeah, wow, those are a lot of action items for anyone listening. Like, no, seriously though, like they seem like very like simple, obvious tips, but I think there's a lot that we don't consider. Like when you see a website, you're like, oh, that's basic, that's intuitive, like it's a website. We've all seen a million of them, but like when you're back behind the scenes, like designing stuff, like when we were designing the database, for example, there were so many things where like we would have beta testers be like, I didn't know there was a search bar. And I was like, what do you mean you didn't know it was a search bar? It's a database. It's right there. It's at the top.
Yeah. No, things have to be so obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, like, I'm trying to figure out the way that I want to word this, but I've heard people say like, basically you should make it so that like a middle schooler could navigate this or read this or make it enjoyable. It's just should be like really obvious, because we're not here to like play games and tricks on people. It's just, you want to get them to where you want them to go. And that can also be a really powerful question, is like, if someone went to your website, what is the one thing you would want them to either take away from this or take an action on? Usually that question is like, what's going to make me the most money kind of thing. Like if you have several offers or things like that, like what's the thing that I would really want them to sign up for or purchase or whatever. So that can be really powerful. And even just making sure that it's not visually overwhelming. I found that that's a huge deterrent for someone, and they're just going to go somewhere else, because there's a million bajillion, that is a proper technical term, but there's a bajillion other, that's a stat. There's a million other websites, and they can find someone else's that doesn't, make them want to be in the fetal position after seeing it.
So true.
If your website gives someone a panic attack, no, I think that's a little bit like my downfall is like, I really like hidden gems in websites, and I like finding them in other people's websites, and I love clicking around and digging around, but nobody else wants to do that.
No. You're a rare breed, and we appreciate you.
Because it's like, then like when you do click on something or you hover over something and it's like, oh, wow, like the detail in this. But again, most people aren't website connoisseurs. They just want to go in, click the right buttons, and then leave.
I think, there's a way to definitely sprinkle those things throughout it. What I found is that people will make that the main thing of their website, is these like flashy elements that are really confusing or overwhelming or something like that. So the key is doing it in a more tasteful way. That's more of like a whisper of an effect versus like that being the whole effect.
Right. Yeah, because I think there is something delightful about finding a little Easter egg here and there, or like, it keeps people like on their toes a little bit if they see something that's cool. But at the same time, it can't just be like a whole bunch of cool things and no cohesive website.
Yeah. And just to give you a very real life, real time example, I got this email yesterday, which I don't even know how I ended up on this email list, but that's another story. But I got this email about this website that like had just launched or something. And it had these, like auto scrolling words on different strips. And there was like 5 of them on one page that were all moving pretty quickly. And I was just so overwhelmed by it because I didn't know where to look. I was looking more at these words than the actual content of the website. So that was an example of like, this is too much. If you had one strip of something that was moving while the rest of the page is static, like that's great. That's a very like tasteful, balanced way of doing it. But when it's to the point where that's the main feature versus the actual content of the website, then it's too much.
Right. And do you, with your clients, like show them how to update stuff themselves and like go in and make their own changes when you're done? Or do they tend to just want you to do the updates in the future?
It's a mix, but we do create a custom tutorial after for their website so that they know how to do it. One, because you shouldn't have to pay someone, I think, to make a simple like update a price or update upcoming concert information or things like that. That can be super overwhelming for someone if they don't have the tools or knowledge how to do it. So I try and make it really clear and concise, and also if they have questions, like just to keep that door open kind of thing. Some people are like, I literally don't want to do this. Can you just like do this for me? And I'm like, that's great too. But yeah, I find that is a big part of why we use Wix, because one, like for Wix versus WordPress, for example, like,
oh, I hate WordPress.
Yeah,
everyone hates WordPress.
I'm not a fan, and it's not necessary to use it if you're like a individual kind of thing. It's for much bigger platforms
Because you
and
can
things like
still
that.
code stuff in Wix. Like, it's fine.
Right. Yeah. Like, it's not necessary. So that's why a big part of it is like, yeah, we probably could figure it out and probably could do things on there, but knowing the people that we work with, like, it's going to be such a turnoff for them, and they're going to also have to spend so much more money in the long term. So I think just being conscious of budgets throughout time, that they don't have to worry about that unless they just want to pay you to do it. Like, all is fine. But I like the idea that people can feel empowered to be able to update their website on their own, especially for the simple things.
Yeah, because also that's like a good skill to have, like you can help someone get set up and do the bulk of the like hard thinking and difficult technical stuff. But then at the end of the day, like being able to update your own website or like help a friend with theirs is a skill. So in a weird way, it's a little educational, right? Like,
yeah, 100%.
It'll last you, I mean, until if Wix ever dies, which I'll be really sad, but it'll last you.
Knock on wood. Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. And I think even
until we're all in the metaverse, it'll last you.
True.
I'm not ready for that. I like it here. I want to stay here.
Us too.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I find even just like the time it takes for someone to like send me an email asking me to update this, then me getting back to them saying, okay, when can I do this for you? All right, now I'm going to send you an invoice. All right, now that I've done it, like, can you review it and make sure that these changes are good? That's just so much more time than it needs to be. So everyone wins when you know how to keep your website updated.
Yeah. No, I used to do like some extra help with an animal rescue, mostly a dog animal rescue in New York. But they wanted someone to like help with their website. So I was like, sure, I'm down to do that. And it was on Squarespace. And I didn't use Squarespace as much as Wix, but it's intuitive. You can figure it out. And I thought it was going to be, like setting up stuff, but the lady would just email me to have me like update blog posts and stuff. Like she would just be like, can you post this on our website? And it was just like a blog post. And I was like, yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Also, like, that's not any different from like you posting the same thing on Facebook.
Yeah. Right. It's like figuring out with anything, it's like, what's a good use of my time? What's a good use of your time? Like, it's probably not doing this very basic update when your skill level or like what you can contribute is so much more. Not the same for myself, but like, maybe for that particular thing, it could have been like uploading better pictures of the dogs to get adopted, or like updating the formatting to make it easier to inquire about how to like take a visit. Like those things, it's, I think, finding with anything, it's like, what's a good use of someone's time and skill set, and like how can everyone benefit from it?
But there's a lot of fear, I think, just surrounding being on the back end of a website. Like people are afraid that, okay, this has happened to me before. So I was helping my teacher who runs Dolce Suono Ensemble with the back end of her website, which was hosted on WordPress. And I was playing around because I wanted it to look better. So I was like, let's pick a new template. I clicked on a new template and it yeeted the entire site off the internet. It was gone.
Oh my God.
Because like whatever format she had, whatever like structures, like wasn't compatible with the new template. But there was nothing on WordPress that said anything about that. Like they were just like, yeah, if you want to pick a new template, pick a new template. And I freaked out. And my teacher was like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know.
RIP for you. That's terrible.
Yeah. No, she ended up like hiring somebody to like, because the site needed to be redone anyways. And I figured since I like did a lot of website stuff already that I can just help her with it. But WordPress is another beast.
Did you dirty? Yeah. See, that's no good. The thing that I really like, and I can't remember the exact spot, but there is a thing called like site history on Wix. So you can see all of the different versions, because I've definitely done that where I changed something and I'm like, this looks worse. Like we've got to go back to this previous version, or like just to see what it was before. And I find that so helpful. And you can use that when, you've hit undo a million times and it just doesn't get any further back than you need it to. And I really like that because, or like we've had clients who are like, I just did this one thing and like everything looks different. We're like, what did you do? And so you can go back instead of spending a million hours, completing, or designing a whole new site because of that. So
Right.
yeah, big fan of that feature.
Yeah. No, that helped even when my brother was coding stuff on the site. Like coding is even more scary because like if you break the code, everything stops working. And there were multiple times where Justin and I were like, oh yeah, like the search doesn't work anymore, or like this filter doesn't work anymore. And it's just because like he was trying to update another feature and it messed with the code. But like that feature has saved us a ton because we could just go back to the last time it worked.
I love that. That happened to me at one of my old jobs. I tried without any knowledge to update this code, and I called my friend who is a like computer science person, and I was like, I don't know what it did. Like, here's the login info, and he was like, you just had to close the bracket or whatever. And I was like, are you kidding? It was just like one little character off from fixing it, and it's just wild. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So I'd love to know, and I think this is a great kind of segue or like last takeaway for our audience members. Like now that you've kind of done the whole music school, flutist, and then pivot thing, and you're continuing to help artists and musicians, like what are some things, and you mentioned like you wish we all wish we had learned more of this in music school, but what are some things that like as a young musician growing up today on the internet, in the internet age, that like you should just figure out how to do?
I would say absorbing a lot of or looking at a lot of different designs and websites and marketing graphics and things like that, and just understanding why certain things are done a specific way. Also asking yourself how you feel about it too, because so many times I've found my favorite experiences in classical music are much more like intimate performances, like much smaller ones, or like any of those like living room concerts and kind of things like that, because I find that they're very inviting. So just asking how you can close that gap through things like marketing. I also am very excited for this next upcoming generation, that there is less of a fear of posting yourself performing online. It's really encouraging. And I always find that, again, like my favorite concerts are ones that I have friends playing in. And I've had friends who have a concert and I see it post after it, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Like, I wish I would have gone to it. And they were just so nervous to post about it. But that there's so much power and excitement and opportunity for community when people share things online and invite people to it in a way that's saying, I think that this will be enjoyable for you or beneficial for you, versus saying like, come watch me do this thing because I'm really great at it. Just kind of pivoting away from someone being like, if it's your senior recital, then yeah, like come watch you perform and do your thing. But for other aspects, I think that it's just, we're moving away from this like diva kind of qualities and more into everyone experiencing things as a whole. And I feel like that can be done, or that happens through performances, but also through social media and through all these different mediums where, you're creating things and sharing things, and it's not such an isolating experience anymore. So long story short, basically, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Look at different things as much as you can and see how it makes you feel. And if that's something you want to try doing yourself, or if it's not something you enjoy, and seeing how you can tweak it to make it more beneficial for you, and things like that. And just knowing that you are going to be bad at things when you start it for the first time. And that is very much okay.
If you're feeling inspired to take on new creative opportunities, check out our database of scholarships, grants, internships, and jobs at forthelostcreative.com. We've been working hard to build this resource for you, and we hope it makes finding your creative career path just a little less daunting.